Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Albert. The program we're going to talk about today is called Swiftcount. So our company, Barcode Apps, is a creator of a program called BAASS that we've been selling for quite a while. And about 2 years ago, we decided to recreate it and rebrand it and make it more colorful and more fun. And we call it Swiftcount. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. So the idea of Swiftcount has three different areas where it works with the inventory. So basically, the first part all starts in Sage 300. So within Sage 300, we have an SDK-based application that will be showing everything that we do within Sage 300 for Swiftcount. So for example, we have the ability to do well, let me just step back just for a minute and tell you what Swiftcount is about. Mauricio. So Swiftcount is basically a web and mobile platform designed specifically to work with any device to eliminate complex processes and to facilitate management of your inventory. The idea of Swiftcount is really to give you a tool that will allow you to do everything that has to do with inventory movement. So the type of thing that we do is we do inventory count. For example, inventory count allows you to do a cyclical count or full counts. And then what we do when we complete the count, we can import them back into Sage 300. And I will show you on the device how easy it is. And when we import them back, we have the option to import them back directly onto the worksheet that was created in Sage to begin with, or we can import them as an adjustment. The adjustment actually works really well if we're doing a count that has serialized or lot numbered items. If I look at some of the other function that we do transfers. The transfers are within warehouses. We have the ability to move things back and forth, and it'll create a transfer or receipt directly within Swiftcount. We do assemblies, so we have the ability to have bulk assembly. So with Swiftcount, you can create multiple assemblies and they will be imported in Sage directly as, for example, you can scan things directly off of a production line, and as it gets manufactured, it'll automatically import it back into Sage, where you can then bulk create them. So once you create them, it actually goes through and builds the assembly basically. So the difference between the way that we do assemblies in Sage and we do them in Swiftcount is in Swiftcount you would basically just go at the end of the production line, scan all the items, and as you're scanning the item, they'll show up on the assembly screen where they can either be all processed at once, or that can be automated as well. So everything that we do within Swiftcount and Sage, we can actually turn on an automation that will basically take everything that you've done and automatically do it in Sage. So for example, you could be at the end of an assembly line, scan product as they come off the assembly line, and those items will be created directly in Sage through the assembly process. We also do data transfer, which is transfers between warehouses, and obviously inventory counting is a big one. So we're going to review some of those things on the platform itself. And then we also do purchase orders, so we can do purchase order receiving, full or partial. We do sales orders, and that's about it. So sales orders, purchase orders, assemblies, inventory count. We have the ability to print barcodes, and we also track the physical location of the product. So we do bin location tracking. So this is the function that we are actually focusing on. And again, as I said before, it's anything that has to do with inventory movement without touching the GL. So we create the document, and then Sage is very good at doing its own things within the GL. So that's what we actually use Sage for. So let me just jump into the platform. So the first part is what happens within Sage 300. And then there is an API that basically takes everything that you see in Sage and sends it to what I call the platform. So I'll show you that in a second. But the idea is that it's a two-way communication between Sage and the platform. So basically, the Swiftcount platform is a web-based platform. So let me just log in. So there's two components to the actual platform. One is the web-based platform, and then the other one is a mobile device. So what I actually showing on my screen is an iOS device. You can use iOS or Android. And the idea of the device is just to basically show you what, it's basically to have legs for your inventory. So you're moving around, you're able to scan things back and forth. And we're going to go through the different processes just to illustrate how that works. But the platform was really built from the ground up to be simple, flexible, powerful. You can use your phone. You can use the camera on the phone. I'll show you that. or you can use some more fancy Android devices. Like for example, what I'm using right now, what I'm holding in my hand is a Honeywell scanner. Let me just show you a picture of that. So basically, this is what I'm holding in my hand. I'm just going to bring it on the screen. It's a Honeywell scanner with an iPod Touch within it, but you could just as well use a phone, or you can use an Android scanner. You can also use your phone paired with some of the other Bluetooth scanners. So there's many different options. The bottom line is what we support iOS and Android. We no longer support Windows Mobile. So within the application, the first thing that I could do, for example, is I can scan a barcode. If I scan a barcode from what we call the hub, which is the main area of the platform, just scanning a barcode will basically open that. So I'm actually doing that right now with the scanner. I'm actually scanning a barcode that's on my desk. So what it does is it'll open the item, shows me the quantity that I have on hand for, this is actually the total. If I click on location list, it'll show me all the bin locations and the warehouse location where that product is located. So I'm able to see exactly at a very, very quick glance what I have, which warehouse, which locations. And from here, I'm able to either transfer it. So I can do a transfer from my main location to anywhere I want, to another bin location, or I can transfer it to a different warehouse, for example. And all I have to do is just enter the from and to, and obviously enter the quantity. So while I'm on this screen, I'm just going to talk very quickly about those 4 buttons, because that's kind of one of the questions that we get when we first start demoing the app, is what are those 4 buttons? So the idea, again, of the app is simplicity. So the idea was it was designed with the concept that somebody would be holding their device in their left hand, and with one thumb, they can click any of those 4 buttons. So those 4 buttons can give you almost any number combination that you can think of. So for example, if I wanted 31, I would type 25, 5, and 1. So it seems kind of not intuitive, but it actually is very, very intuitive once you start using it. And if you don't want to correct it, you just shake your device and it'll give you the option to clear it. If you tap and hold any of the button, it actually brings in a multiplier. So you can, if you had 3100, you could just do exactly what I did, but you'd hold the button so that the multiplier by 100 would kick in. You can also just vary the quantity slightly by just going up or down on the little cursor. And finally, if the numbers are more complicated, you would just tap in the middle, and then it opens a full keyboard. And it's not only a full keyboard, it's also a calculator. So if I had, if I was transferring 17 plus 3, whatever I transfer, I can actually create, have a small operation that would allow me to do the calculation. And then once I'm done, I can either just swipe to the right to accept it, or hit the little checkbox at the bottom. And as soon as the process is done, actually the transaction is instant. So the second that I've done the transaction, it actually will reflect both on the Swiftcount platform, and within 30 seconds, the API that's on the local server will actually grab that transaction, process it within Sage 300. So what I just did now, where I transferred some items from warehouse 1 to warehouse 2, that would actually be reflected in Sage 300. So I would be able to see this as a completed transfer, and the item would already be in. And that's actually a setting. You can make it do it automatically, or you can just have them accumulate, and somebody would obviously review them before they would go ahead and process it. So what I actually was demonstrating is what we call movement. So within the movements, there is 3 different functionality. If I select an item, again, I can just scan it. And in this case, I can use, I'm going to use a phone camera so that you see what that looks like. So by using the phone camera, I can just scan a barcode. So I just scan the barcode that's on my screen, and it applied a filter. So I scan the barcode that's at 100. So it applied a filter for anything that has the number 100 within it. If I pick this item, these are the 3 operations that I can do. We have what we call a movement in or out, and a transfer. The transfer is what I just demonstrated. The movement in and out is just gives me the ability to increase my quantity on hand or decrease my quantity on hand. And again, it doesn't just affect the inventory. What it would actually do is it would actually affect, it would create a document. So what I mean by a document is actually a transaction within Sage. So if I do a plus, I'm going to have a receipt that will show the quantity that I've received. So just typing on plus, selecting which quantity, and the location and the quantity. As soon as I select that, that will create the receipt within Sage. If I click on minus, it'll actually take it out of Sage, again with a negative receipt. But again, I have a document as an audit trail within Sage to show that it was done. Within Swiftcount, I'll always be able to review every single movement. Everything that we do is actually tracked by the user, and there is a timestamp as well. So I'm always able to go back and see what's happened within the platform. So in, out, and transfer, this is what we call the basic movements. So those are functions that can be used on a daily basis to just quickly adjust the inventory. Obviously, that's not the main purpose of the app, because most companies do not use a quick inventory adjustment to adjust their inventory. Most companies would actually create a sales order or a purchase order. So the sales order or a purchase order also can be processed directly from the mobile device, and this would actually be reflected on the platform. So if I open my sales orders within the platform, any sales order that gets created within Sage would then create a sales order in Swiftcount. So I've just, on a previous demo, I started scanning some of the item. As you're scanning the item, the percentage would increase. Everything happens automatically in terms of how the data flows. So as soon as I scan something, this would start being active. So if I had multiple people in the warehouse, we would be able to see as they're scanning. And because it's a web-based platform, you can see it from anywhere. You can see it from your phone, you can see it from a tablet or from the internet, anywhere on the internet. So some customers actually buy the program just so that if they have a second shift, when they're home at night, they can make sure that the employees are actually doing the counts. So for example, if I look at this second order here and I see what I have on that order, I'm able to see on my mobile device the same information, obviously. So when I go to sales here, the sale that I'm looking at is my cell number 101, which is not in here. So I'm just going to load it up. So I could have loaded it up by scanning it, or I can just select it from the list. So when I hit on the plus, it basically shows me all the sales that have been exported from Sage onto the Swiftcount platform. And from there, I'm able to open it and scan it. And again, the same idea as what I can do here. I can always click on a button on Sage just to print, to show a barcode. So what I'm able to do from here is I'm able to start scanning, again, either using the camera from the device. Let me just bring back the device. So I've actually picked the camera from the device, and now I'm able to scan the barcode. And this is actually what we call quick mode. So as soon as I scan something, it'll make a noise that's very distinct to show me that it actually got the first item, but it actually, so in this case here, I got the item right, but I needed two and I've only picked one. So it's showing me that it's, oh, I'm not sure if you're able to hear the noise, but the noise is very distinct. So the first noise was telling me you got the right item, but you haven't got them all. The second noise was telling me you got the right item and you've got them all. So if I was to scan the same item again, now it makes another noise very distinct, and the color changes to show me that now I've overshipped it. I only needed two and I've shipped three. So I can just click on the minus here and adjust my my quantity. So I'm back to 2 here. So I would basically go through and scan all my items. The other thing that I can do, I don't have to scan the item from what I just showed you, which is what we call the auto scan. I can just take my item directly from the order itself. And in this case, if I scan, so let me pick the other item because this one is already completed, obviously. So on the platform as well, without doing anything, I can now see that I had two and they got scanned instantly. And if I looked at the previous screen, I would see that my order is now 50% completed because I needed 4, 2 and 2, and I've already completed the 2. So just to illustrate the second way of entering an item, if I'm not using what we call the auto scan, I can also scan the item. In this case, because I'm not in the auto scan mode, meaning I don't want to scan every item individually, what I'm doing now is I'm scanning the item and it's opening a screen where now it's asking me to enter the quantity. And you'll notice here, this is exactly the same buttons and the same calculator. Everything is identical to what I showed you a few minutes ago on the movement, except the color is different. So this is just to give familiarity and to simplify the training. We allow the users to have the same functionality from one module to the other so that the training is actually much easier. Once I know how to use those 4 buttons, I'll know how to use them no matter where I am within the app, obviously. And here as well, I have the option, just like on the movements, I have the option to select which location. Now, it defaulted to the one location because that item is only in one location. If I had this item in multiple locations, I'd be able to select, I'm taking one from here, or I'm taking both from here, doesn't really matter. And the same idea here, once I have my quantity, all I have to do is either hit the little checkbox or just swipe from right to left, and that actually sends it back to the portal where now the order is actually being completed. So I can see right away that it's completed. And the final step, would be to process the order. So we can process the order directly from the web portal, or I could just process it from the mobile as well. So the web portal is just a nice to have. It's not necessary to even look at it. Everything can be done from the mobile device. So what I just did right now, where I basically scan my items for that order, I picked the location where I picked them from. The last step would just be to hit process. When I hit process, I'm able to see what I scan. And actually, even before that, I just want to illustrate something else. We also have something called a Swift audit, which basically allows me to just audit what I've done. So if I just put my finger on the top of the screen and scroll down, I'm able to see all the scans. So in this case here, I had the first item was on auto scan. So I did 2 scans of the first item. The second item was not on auto scan, and I'm able to see that. So 1 of the first item, and 2 basically completes my order. But more relevant to that screen is that it's showing me that I'm the user doing it. There could have been 3 or 4 other users working on that same order, obviously, if it was a bigger order, and I'd be able to see the other users as well. So that if I'm not sure if something's already been picked, if 2 or 3 people are working on the same orders, it can be done like that, and everything gets automated, gets updated automatically. So as multiple people are scanning the order, it all gets congregated back. I can anytime just swipe down to see who's scanned what, and then when the order is completed, I hit process. And if I hit confirm now, what's going to happen is that sale is going to get processed on the server. The API from the local instance is actually going to pull that information, and that's going to get imported in Sage and create a shipment. And again, in Sage, we have 2 options. We can either create the shipment automatically, or we can basically go into and import them manually. So the only reason you don't import them manually is that you may want to add a tracking number or some other options. It's about 50-50 within our customers. Some like the full automation, and some like to be able to go in and just click on import. So basically what I've shown you is that just creating an order in Sage, we'll send it to Swiftcount, that's automatic. You can then take a mobile device, just go in and scan the item. So that gives you the ability to make sure that not only you're scanning the right item, but you're also scanning the right locations. If you had serial or lot numbers, you'd also be selecting or scanning the right lot numbers. And then you send it back. When you finish, again, from the mobile device directly, you can process it, and that'll push it right back to Sage and create the shipment. And if there was serial or lot numbers, those would get assigned exactly at the same time. So the whole idea is really to make it as simple as possible. So once it's configured and set up, the training actually is done within a couple hours, because there is really not that much for the pickers and for the receivers. The actual training is just showing them what I just showed you on the mobile device, the ability to just push in orders back and forth, be able to scan them, process them, and then it'll go to Sage and create the shipments and the receipts right away if it was a sales orders, purchase orders, I mean. So what I just showed you for the sales order, the exact same process applies for purchase orders. So in the case of a purchase order, we call them orders in Swiftcount. In the case of the purchase order, same idea. I have a purchase order. So this one's already been received, and this one actually was over received, so it shows me 235%, but because I keep them going in the same order. But the idea would be that on your mobile device, you'd be able to see your orders, you're able to see the items, and same idea, you would go through. You can either pick, so in this case here, the item is lot numbered, so I actually have to select the lot number or enter a new lot number as I'm receiving it. And this lot number would then be, obviously it has to follow all the rules that Sage has, like the masks and everything else. That's because we use a Sage logic to create everything. Everything has to follow along the Sage logic. That's pretty obvious. But the same idea is if I pull a purchase order from Sage, I would be able to see it on the mobile device. If it had lot number, I'd have to enter or scan the lot numbers. And when I process it, the final step would be that it would actually get processed. And just like with the sales order, I have an option to automatically import it back into Sage, in which case it would create a receipt, or I can have it queue and have somebody review it and then just hit a button to import it into Sage. When we do the automation, I just want to highlight one little thing here, because that's a concern that we sometimes have. When we do the automation, we do it through something called tasks. So we actually have a task monitor. We have a log of every single task, and within the tasks, we can pick and choose what tasks get automated. So for example, here the assemblies task is inactive. So if I created assemblies, meaning if I scanned item to actually manufacture them, in this case, because I've made it inactive, those would not get imported in Sage automatically. If I wanted to import them to Sage, all I have to do is uncheck the box. And then once I save that, from that moment on, that would automate it. Same idea with the sales orders, the purchase orders. We have also the option, obviously, to automate the transfers. When we do anything that's automated, we can assign up to 3 email addresses, and we can decide if we want to send email reports every time something happens, or we can decide to only send it on fail or on success. So for example, for sales orders, we have the option to send not only an email if it fails, but we also have the option to attach a packing slip. So if I was to automate the sales order process, the same sales order that I just demonstrated, when I create a sales order, it gets sent to Swiftcount. We then use the scanner to pull these sales orders to create the actual shipment. And then in this case here, because I've turned on the email notification with an attachment of the packing slip, a packing slip would be automated to be sent to up to 3 people. So it could be the receiver, it could be the shipper, it could be anything. And for each function, we can have different users, different email addresses. So in the case of the shipment, I could have the shipper attach a packing slip automatically. So as soon as they completed something directly from the mobile device, they would get then an email with the packing slip. So in the scenario that I just described, you could have somebody in the back that packs the order, that picks the orders, that uses a scanner. It'll get the packing slip that's coming from Sage, but he doesn't have to open Sage. This is all automated, and they would get this directly sent to their inbox for their email addresses. So sales orders, purchase order, these are probably about 70% of the people buy the program mostly for that. But the ability to be able to see where things are, to have the bin tracking is quite powerful. And then the other functionality that's very popular is the ability to do counts. So the counts follow the same process as Sage, where basically you have to create a worksheet. Once you've created the worksheet, the count would then get created into Swiftcount. So then you would be able to see within the worksheet what it is that you're supposed to count. So for example, here I have a count, and this count only has a few items. So it's what we call a cycle count. If you have you can either do a cycle count or a full count. It depends on the worksheet that you've created within Sage. And the way the count works, same idea as everything else. If I go to count, as soon as it gets created, it will then show up on the mobile device. I can pick and choose who the users are that are going to be counting. So I can have different counts for different users. Now that would work only in Swiftcount, because in Sage you can't have more than 1 count per warehouse, but I could have, let's say, 1, 2, or 3 warehouses and assign different users for different warehouses, so that would work. And then the idea, once you see the count, is you open the count. As I said, you can have multiple counts, so I have the same count here. Once I pick the count, just like on the sales order, I can just scan the item. And when I scan the item, basically, it'll give me the option to just open the screen, where same idea here again, I have my 4 buttons, and again, a different color. So once I get used to the color scheme and the noises, it actually is quite instinctive to know that if it's red, I'm in a count, if it's green, I'm in a movement, and so on. But the idea here, when I'm counting, I would then tell the system which location I'm counting from or to, just to actually indicate that this is where I'm actually physically counting, because the idea of a count is basically to reset all the items that you have within their proper bin locations and warehouse location. Again, I would put my quantities, and then once I accept this, what would happen is as soon as I counted, it basically shows me on the portal. You can separate either what I've counted, or I can see all the products. So for example, here, the first counter may have counted 230, and we need 2,400. So we actually don't know how many we need. It's just the whole idea of doing a count is doing a blind count, but just for the sake of argument, let's say I'm going to count another 900. As soon as I count it, I have to pick a location, obviously. As soon as I count it, it gets updated instantly. Again, there is no data transfer, there's no everything. Everything works through what we call push notification. So the data just flows, doesn't matter. Same idea as a sales order. I can swipe down on the count, and I'm able to see all the count. I'm able to see if there was other users. This becomes quite useful. If I'm within an item, I can see. So right now I'm at the list of the items that I count. So when I swipe down, I see all the items. But if I was within an item and I'm not sure if that item has been counted or not, all I have to do is just swipe down and I'd be able to see not only who counted it, how many were counted, and when and by whom. So it gives me a very clear indication that the item, if it wasn't marked properly when it was counted, then you'd be able to see that it actually was counted properly. So just finish that count for this item, just to kind of finish the illustration. So the more I'm counting, the closer it gets to what the system thinks I should be getting, because obviously this comes from my worksheet. And then at the end of the day, what we're worried about is a discrepancy. So as you're counting all the items, the actual count will just get closer and closer to what you're supposed to count. When you finish, the same idea as when we did a sales order or purchase order, the same idea would be to process the count. When you process the count, you have the option to set whatever you haven't scanned as 0, because maybe you didn't count them because you're not finding them, so the actual count is 0. Or you can ignore them, which in this case would just make whatever you've counted the only item that would be relevant to the actual count. So again, once you process this count, what this will do, this will go back to Sage 300, and at this point you actually have to import it into Sage 300. And what I was explaining before is you can either import it back within inventory process it, you can just import it back, just import the quantities. What that would do is that would apply the quantity to the worksheet that was created within Sage, or you can import it as an adjustment, and it would just create an inventory adjustment for the variances. So in the case that I'm demonstrating here, the inventory adjustment would just be minus 269 of that one item, because that's all I counted and that's all I told the system to worry about. So again, I'm not going to go too deep into it. I just want to give a high-level overview of how simple the process is and how powerful it is. The idea is really to just give you full visibility on your inventory directly from a mobile device. It can be your phone, it can be an actual scanner, it can be different, it can even be a web portal. So once you've created the count, it'll adjust the inventory. This is a process that you do on an ongoing basis, but it just gives you the ability to do that. So again, just to recap, what we do is we have the way to create movements. So the movements can be just adjustment of your inventory, or they can be actual production, which would then generate into an assembly. You can do counts, which just would generate an inventory adjustment or a worksheet. Just a quick word on the reason we have the option to either do an inventory adjustment or a worksheet is that in Sage 300, it's actually quite cumbersome to adjust a count through the worksheet if the item is lot numbered or serial number. Because it doesn't allow you to enter negative quantity of serial numbers. So in the case where you ship the wrong serial number, what would actually happen is that your inventory is actually accurate. Let's say you sell TVs and you have 5 of them, but at some point in the past you shipped the wrong one. So the 5 serial number that you have in the system are not the 5 serial number that are on the floor, because you shipped the wrong one. So you have one serial number that does exist in Sage, but says it's no longer there because you think you shipped it. And then you have one serial number that actually is not there, but physically it's there because you shipped the wrong one. So if you try to adjust that through an inventory, through the worksheet, it actually won't let you, because there is no discrepancy. There is nothing that changed. So the advantage of being able to do it through an inventory adjustment is that the inventory adjustment would actually allow you to have more than one line for the same item. So you'd have one line for the item with a negative quantity of 1. It would be an adjustment of quantity and cost for that one that was actually shipped by accident, so that one actually would come out of inventory. And then you'd have a second line that would basically signify the second item, which the one that you counted, but the system didn't think you had it there because, as I said before, it was shipped by accident. So in this case, you'd have one line that takes out the one that is no longer there, and one line that puts back the one that is there. So at the end of the process, once you post the inventory adjustment, then your inventory is still at 5, but now it's got the proper serial number. So it's actually quite a powerful way to do it, so that you basically fix your serial numbers, your lot numbers, and your quantity all at once, and that it respects the cost, obviously, because the adjustment is created for quantity and cost. And the other advantage of doing it as an adjustment is that The adjustment is just a transaction that gets created. It doesn't actually affect Sage until you've posted it. So if you create your adjustment and then you post, you go to Sage and you see the adjustment, you're able to print a printout of this adjustment, and you can also see the total value of the adjustment. And if it looks completely out of whack, you can always go back and modify the quantities, or you can go and rescan. And worst case scenario, you can just delete it if you don't feel comfortable with it. Go and fix your count and then import it again as a new adjustment. So the adjustment offers quite a few advantages. It just the worksheet is a little bit easier if you don't have on-hand quantity, if you don't have serial or lot number, but both options are on the table, so it doesn't really matter which one you select. So I'm just going to touch a little bit on some of the other functionalities. So as far as Sage is concerned, as I said, in and out, production, transfers, sales orders, purchase orders, inventory count. These are the major functions that you'll perform within Sage, and that will be done between Swiftcount and Sage. Some of the additional function that you have in Sage that are not in Swiftcount, the ability to track bin location, unless you're using something like ORCID bin tracking, that is not an option in Sage. We do have a light integration to ORCID bin tracking, but once you start using Swiftcount, you don't really necessarily need it. So the ability to be able to see the location both from the mobile device and from the portal is a big advantage. So you can see each item in the different locations. You could do transfers, you can do mass transfers. If you're rearranging your warehouse and you want to take everything from one bin and move it to another bin, you can do all that within Swiftcount. It doesn't really affect Sage if it's within the same warehouse location, but if it's multiple bins into one, you can do that. So the ability to do bin tracking within Swiftcount is a big plus, and a lot of people use that functionality. The other thing that we do is we have the ability to print barcode labels. So barcode labels can be printed either for purchase orders where all the items are selected and printed based on the items that are being received on a purchase orders, or the inventory can be you can just pick and choose items and print barcodes based on them, because we want to be able to print barcodes. So the way that we actually print barcode is something that we've done a lot of work on, and we continually do more work because more and more people want to have different templates. So for example, if I go into a part number and I click on the item itself, first of all, I have a barcode. So if I'm testing a scanner, or if I'm testing or demoing, I can always see a barcode, but there's also something called print options. The print options are through the web, and when we print through the web, it's basically an 8.5 by 11 label sheet. So we have a bunch of Avery label templates, different size, different format, depending on the actual Avery labels that you'd be using. So in this case, it would just generate a PDF that would then be sent to the printer. But we also have what we call local printing. So local printing allows you to have a local printer connected to your server or to the network. And here that would be typically a Zebra printer, the thermal transfer printers, and you can have different templates. So we have pictures of those templates, and we can also customize templates for you depending on what your requirements are. So the idea would be that you're able to print labels that are very specific to your requirements. So depending the type of printer that you have, the size of the labels, and the positioning that you want on the label, we can pick and choose the different templates. And by default, it comes with 5 templates, but we offer customized templates as well for a small fee. And when you create the label, you can select how many you want to print, and as soon as you save it, that would actually send a command to the local API to just generate the print to the local printer, obviously provided that it's configured properly. And then some of the other thing that we do, just to illustrate the actual process, is that we have, let me pick a different item. We have something called analytics. The way that the whole platform is working is there is a concept in the platform called movements. So the idea of movements is that anything that has to do with the inventory in or out is a movement. So it doesn't matter if you're doing a count and you have a discrepancy and it's negative, then it's a movement out. If you're shipping an order, it's a movement out. If you're receiving a purchase order, it's a movement in. If you're doing a transfer, it's 2 movements, 1 out, 1 in. So the reason I like to explain that is because the whole platform is built on the concept of movement. So for example, this is the item that I've been playing with during the demo a little bit earlier. So you can see that on this item, we actually had a transfer, and then we had 2 movements that were actually generated by the counts. And the reason we have 2 movements is that I wasn't really paying attention which location, so I picked different locations. So it actually did a movement in each of the location to adjust based on what it was that I counted. So the count not only adjusted my total on-hand quantity, but it also adjusted within my different bin locations where the item was supposed to be. So the movements are actually, this is the movement for today, but I can actually pick a range. I can pick a custom range and see all the movements. So if I wanted to see all the movements from a specific date to a specific date, I can say custom range and pick the from and to dates, and that would actually show me all the different movement. Where that becomes really useful is if there is something that looks wonky in your inventory, then you're able to see what's going on in terms of why the inventory is not where it is. So you can say that we received 100 on that day, 20 were moved to that location, 40 were shipped, 20 more were received. So you actually add them up. There is even a report that's called a picture in time, where you can pick a specific time and it'll show you how many you had at that time. And what it does, it goes from day one where you receive your item and then just totals up all the movements for that item for that period of time, and then just gives you a clear indication of where you are at that moment. I'm going to just show you quickly some of the power of those. I'm just going to bring in another screen here that has some data that's a little more relevant. So I'm actually, in this case, I'm actually going to go into the analytics module, which basically allows me to see everything that's happened for products. So when I first go into the analytics, I can see all the movements. So these are for today, but again, I can pick a range. But then I can be a little more specific. I can say, for example, I want to see the sales. I can pick, I want to see the sales for last month. So what that is actually doing is that's actually totaling all the movements for the specific period, which was from December 1 to December 31st here. And again, I could have put my own range, but by combining all the movements, what I'm able to see is I'm able to see my top items. It's just basically showing me my top item. I'm able to see my top pickers, because again, we have each movement identifies the type of transaction, identifies the user, identifies the data, identifies the products, and so on. So I'm able to see all this information just by combining all the movements for that period. I'm now able to see my top picker. I can see which days of the week are busier for me. I can see purchase order versus sales orders, and I can see the actual items. And this is just the beginning. We're actually building a lot more analytics, because the whole idea is to build intelligence within the platform. As you're using the platform more and more, you're able to see all the various movements. So at a high level, that's basically what I wanted to show today. I mean, the whole idea is to, the key that I really want to emphasize is the ability that the platform gives you to have full visibility on your inventory, very easily do some transaction which are not necessarily that simple, like shipping, receiving, making sure you're scanning the product so you know you're picking the right item, making sure you're shipping the right item, making sure you're receiving the right item, making sure you're putting it at the right location, and give you full visibility if you're looking for something to show you have it not only here, but you have it in those 10 different locations as well, which is something you don't see within Sage 300 unless you're using a bin tracking program. But again, even with the bin tracking program, you only see it with Sage 300. The advantage within Swiftcount is you're able to see it directly from your mobile device. The other thing that I want to touch on very quickly is we have the ability to control what the users see and do within the program. So when you go to the settings and you see all your users, you're able to assign different functionality to the different users. So each user can have very specific rights, but also as a manager, you're also able to go in and say, okay, this user can only do this, this, and this. This user can only see this, this, and this. There is every action within the program has what we call action and visibility. If you only have visibility, you can see it, but you can't act on it. But if you have action and visibility, you can actually do both. And then as a manager, you can always go in and remove not only actions or visibility to some of the functionality to the program within the program, you can also pick and choose what the user can see. So for example, if you had a warehouse in Montreal and a warehouse in Toronto, you can make sure that the users in Montreal do not see anything that has to do with the warehouse in Toronto. So they wouldn't see their inventory, they wouldn't see their transactions, they would only see what they have. So Sage may say that you have 40 of something, but if you've segregated within the different location, the guy in Montreal will only see his 20 and the guy in Toronto will only see his 20, can only act on his 20. And then you can have a manager that has higher level that would be able to see both and they would be able to do transactions. So that works well on some smaller environment, like for example, in a restaurant where if you're using the program, you don't necessarily want the kitchen staff to see what's in the bar and vice versa, because it's really not relevant to them. So you can pick and choose based on the products and based on the location, who can see what and where. So I'm going to leave it at that because I know we don't have that much time, and I want to leave some time open for questions. I apologize if I speak very fast. I'm told I should slow down, and I just remembered that I should have, so I should have done it before. But anyway, I'm just going to open it to the floor for questions. If there is anything, I'd be happy to answer.
So if anyone does have questions, enter them in the chat box. I did get a few throughout the presentation though. So the first one is, what size customers are ideal for your platform?
So Swiftcount is actually designed to be extremely flexible. We have I would say our smaller customer is a one user. They have about 30 products. They have a little cart and they manage their point of sale. They actually don't use Sage 300. They use a popular point of sale system. But Swiftcount works perfectly for them just to be able to count their inventory, receive, and move stuff around within their little kiosk to make sure that they have their inventory. And then we have customers that have 50 users with multiple warehouses. We have one customer that has over 300,000 part numbers. This is a Sage 300 customers with over 50 users, and they do about 150 to 200 transactions a day. And then we have anything in between. So I would say there's really no size that's too small or too large, and the price is very flexible in terms of the amount of and again, you can pick and choose the plans. We have different plans, and we can quote that based on your needs, basically.
So the next question I got was, do you need a dedicated Sage 300 license for Swiftcount?
We actually don't. Everything that happens in Swiftcount is outside of Swiftcount, so you don't need the dedicated Sage 300 license. We do use a Sage 300 license for a little snapshot, little very, very short amount of time. So for example, when we're actually when we're receiving a sales order, when the sales order is exported, we don't use a license. When the sales order is scanned, we don't use a license. When the sales order is completed, we don't use a license. We'll use a license for about a half a second when we're actually pushing this back to Sage. We have our API actually has to use this because we are using the Sage SDK. We actually have to open the connection, and at that specific moment, it uses a license. But most customers do not buy an extra license just for Swiftcount. It is better if you have additional licenses that we can use one, but you don't need to have one dedicated.
Okay, and the last question I have here is, how long does it take to get started, and what is the process to start?
So basically, the process to start is usually what we do is we'll have a discussion with the customers. We'll understand your needs. We'll make sure that what we have to offer matches your needs. We'll go through a personalized demo with more specific to what I just did now, where we'll basically answer questions that are relevant to you. And then once we're okay with that, then we'll work with your partner. In this case, obviously, we'd work with BAASS to make sure that we have the permissions needed and the connectivity we did. But normally within a few days, we can have everything installed. It's actually not that complicated of an install. And then it's just a matter of, depending on the commitment that we have from the customer on how many users need to be trained, what kind of devices. And so we do a discovery meeting where we'll evaluate the hardware that works best for you based on your environment, which users have to be trained, what specific areas of the program need to be the ones that you'll have to focus on. And so I would say we can have you, we have had customers up and running within a week. We have had customers up and running within a month or so. So if you really, we have a program that we offer at the end of the year called Inventory in a Hurry. And basically this, we can have you up and running in a day, where basically if you really wanted to do an inventory and you don't want to do it manually, you wanted to use Swiftcount, we can have you connected to Sage, just focus on the inventory, just import the inventory part numbers, allow you to scan using even your own device, and then we'll push this inventory back into Sage. So the Inventory in a Hurry is actually a very popular program at a very specific time of the year, typically the end of the year when people want to do a quick inventory and they realize that it's a real pain to do it manually.
Okay, I don't seem to have any more questions coming in. So with that being said, I would just like to thank you, Albert, for presenting today, as well as all the attendees for taking the time out of their busy days to attend.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
All right, bye-bye.